This week I'm sharing a few super simple tips to up your Procreate leaf paintings and give them that beautifully textured, radiant effect. Hey everyone, my name is Tila, and if we haven't met before, I am the voice behind your screen. I've listed the specs to this project on screen with me, and you can pick up the free color swatches right in the video description. Let's get into it. For this project, I'll be using my Gouache Lovers brush set, and we're actually only going to be using one brush out of the set. It's the streaky semi-transparent brush, and the color I'm using is the third one, so it's the middle green, and my brush is pretty large. I'm up to 50% for this, so it's totally up to you how you want to dry your leaf. This brush does have built-in pressure sensitivity, so if I go little pressure, lots of pressure, little pressure, you can practice making your own leaves like that if you want, or you can draw them and then fill them in. If you decide to do it this way, which is my preference, if you lift up your stylus and then put down new strokes, the way this brush was programmed, you'll get some different tonalities. So that adds a little bit to the realism in it, and there is that texture built into it, that pretty gouache texture. Now let's make this a radiant leaf. And in order to get started, I always like dropping my shadows in first. So create a brand new layer, change the blend mode to multiply, and we're going to select the second color. So it's just a little bit darker than the base. And all I'm going to do is add in a few lines, and it doesn't really matter where you put them, just add in a few lines. Next, we're going to grab our smudge brush and make sure your smudge brush is the same brush. It's the streaky semi-transparent brush, and my brush size is about 30%. If you want it larger, just go larger depending on your leaf size. And this is probably the trickiest part of this, but it's really not that hard. You're just going to push the color around and then bring it back. So you're just smudging it. So I'm just smudging all of these, and it'll take a little bit of practice to get used to the motions. But what we basically want to achieve is a leaf that doesn't have these straight line streaks in it, which is what I'm getting right now. So I just have to shift where I'm pushing the color in order to break it up a little bit. So this part requires a little bit of patience or a larger brush size, and you're just going to keep pushing the color around until you get it moving in a shape that is less stripy. So what I have right here, you don't want that. So I'm going to show you how to fix it. We're just going to push, and when you push it back, you're going to create negative space, which can be helpful. So I like coming back and then pushing it forward, and it really breaks things up. But we do want some streaks, like I like this streak that I'm getting right here. And I don't like how I have this really long shadow, so I'm going to try and break that one up a little bit. So just a lot of pushing and pulling. This process definitely has a bit of randomness baked into it, but we're doing it with intention. I've got my first layer of shadow in here, and I've got some nice things going on. I like this highlight that I've got right here. I'm going to take advantage of that. And then I've got a dark shadow right here with a little bit of a highlight next to it. That part's important. Wherever you can have a highlight right next to a shadow, that's where you're going to get that really definitive fold in the leaf. And I've got another one kind of happening right here. So I'm going to pull this one up a little bit further with a shadow next to it. I don't like going overboard with these, but if I see them here and there, I like making sure that I get them in there. So that's the base of our leaf. We're going to add in another layer of shadow now. So create a brand new layer, change the blend mode to multiply, and switch to your darkest color. So it's the first color. And this time I'm going to reduce the size of my brush a little bit, coming down to 20%. And I'm only focusing on the darkest areas of my shadow. So I only want to put this where I want my darkest, deepest parts of the leaf texture. So I always look where I already have the darkest areas from what I just smudged, and that's where I'll put them in. So don't do too many. Usually right at this transition area, I'll always put something over here. Let's smudge these out. I'm going to reduce my size a little bit since these strokes are thinner. Same idea, just pushing and pulling, softening it up so it does look like a shadow, but it's a defined shadow. Like I said, it requires a little bit of patience, a lot of just pushing and pulling until you move and manipulate things where you want them to go. So my big thing is I want this shadow bumping up tight to this highlight because it's going to make it even more obvious once I add those brighter colors in. That's our leaf with our shadow. Now we get to really make it come to life. So I'm going to create a brand new layer, change the blend mode to screen, so it's 2 underneath the normal. And we're going to go to the first brightest color from our base color. So it's the 4th color. And I'm just going to put this where I have these natural highlights occurring from my shadow work. And if you have a light source, like if I have a light source coming in this way, then I'll make sure that I have some stronger highlights right along that edge. Same thing as before, we're going to smudge it out. You can also stipple with your smudge brush, and that can give you some pretty texture too, or just break up the intensity of your highlight. All right, and then to just make it pop a little bit more, we're going to create a brand new layer, change the blend mode to screen again, and choose the brightest color. And this time we're only going to focus on the most intense parts of the highlights. So we can have our normal highlights, and then we're going to have the parts that are really shining. So this one's an intense area. I've got some intensity up here along this edge, and then just in a few places here. And I think that should do it. And then same thing as before. Just going to blend those out. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit the like button, subscribe, and I will see you next time.